All right. Welcome, everybody, to today's office hours. We're going to be going over the main topic here being workflow activities, actions, and basically the calendar, how you actually look at those. So we'll get started here in a second. My name is Mark Stepp. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer here at Realvolve and been doing real estate technology for the past 33 years, helping real estate agents understand the why in what we do and how to automate, how to sustain a business, just helping you stay in business through automation. So to get things started, we're going to go through workflow activities, kind of some of the basics, but instead of just showing you through the slides, we're going to go through some live aspects of it and why it's an important part of your business. And workflows themselves are your bread and butter, honestly. The processes that you do every day is the important thing. And just like I use this example a lot, McDonald's. Why is it that a multi-billion-dollar company like McDonald's can be successful when it's run by a lot of high school students? Why is that? Well, it's because they've got systems, they've got processes, and it's the same thing as a workflow. It's how do you build a hamburger? There's lots of ways of doing it, but McDonald's has a specific way that they want their McDonald's burger built. And because of that, it's very consistent, it's very repetitious in a way, but it's very consistent. And because of that consistency, people come back day after day, hour after hour sometimes. So what we're going to talk about today really is the creation of the workflow activities themselves, some of the actions that you build into those activities, and then just kind of how you view them on your calendar. As we get into this, there's a few things that I want to make sure that you guys know of whenever we're looking at the screen itself. Before we actually get in there, the title, what is an activity that we're going to be doing? The type over here is it a to-do? Is it a call? Is it an appointment? Whatever. This is nothing magical. It's just a classification, a category type thing where you can see very quickly what it is. There's some filtering capabilities, so you can say, show me all my to-dos or whatever, and that can be important. But it's there for information. The assign to is extremely important. Who am I assigning this workflow activity to whenever I start the workflow? Whenever you go in and you create an activity manually, you're typically saying, okay, who's doing this? You set up the activity one time, you put in the activity title, and it's either you doing it, your assistant, whomever. In this case, we can assign basically a holding place, a role, or a person that whenever we start the workflow, it can use that information to actually pick the right person for you. The with field is, who am I doing this activity with? Who am I sending this to? Is this an appointment? Who am I going to the appointment with? The with field is bringing together the people that's involved in this particular activity. And again, we can use placeholders for that whenever we're setting up the workflow. And that workflow, whenever you start it, then picks the correct people based off of what you've got selected here. The next most important thing that's in this is, how do you define when to do the appointment or to do the activity itself? It could be, days, weeks, months, years out, but setting up that schedule, setting up that plan of when I want this to happen is extremely critical. So whenever you start the workflow, it uses whatever information is in here and it generates it. We do have checklist items. So whenever activities need to get done, they have checklists of things that you want to complete. Those can be put in there. But the bigger thing is the automation. What actions do you want to perform when completing this activity? Once you go to complete it, if you've got any checklist items, those checklist items have to be completed. Once they're completed, if you have any, then it comes up and says, okay, what action do you want me to perform as part of completion of this activity? Once you understand those basic elements of the activity, you can create any number of things that will help you create that workflow, create that process that you do every day, just like McDonald's. And we're going to go over that. The action itself is extremely powerful. I'm not aware of any software out there that has better action capability than what Realvolve does. Some of the things that it can do for you as far as sending messages, there's an area here for sending messages that can be emails, that could be SMS, could be Twitter messages. These are the things that you want to send out. Now it uses that with field to determine who's going to receive these, but once that's determined, then it will send out whatever piece you have. Now I'm just going to go into full screen here so we can see this a little bit better. So you've got the send message. You can choose how you want to send it, what you want to send, which template you want to send. There's several different pieces there, but it's all a matter of choosing what you need in order to send the message. The other thing that an action can do is change data, change those tags on your data. So maybe you start a workflow and you want to automatically tag a contact with something. You can add tags, you can remove tags. And this is just an easy way of doing that from within a workflow. We'll cover some of that. Starting and stopping other workflows. So what I call branching. This is the process of saying, okay, I'm starting a workflow. I go through, I'm completing certain things. At some point in my workflow, there may come a time where I could go one way or I could go another. And it depends on many factors. It may depend on, was the inspection complete? Was the how did the inspection turn out? Are there repairs that need to be made, or are there no repairs that need to be made? Okay, those types of things might stem or might create a new branch of processes that we need to do. And starting a workflow, stopping workflows, that's all a powerful aspect of it. And then there's one other one that we added last year, I believe, or year before, which is webhooks. Extremely powerful for interfacing, integration with other SaaS companies. Maybe you want to send a postcard. Maybe you want to send information to somebody. You can use a webhook that takes the data about the property, the person, whatever, and sends that information through a webhook that can then be used to do stuff. So we're not going to get into any of that, but just realize that the power of what you can do with an action is extreme. And whenever you set these up, you can do lots and lots of tasks automatically. So okay, once you get your workflows all created and you start a workflow process, all it's doing is it's creating individual activities. They're linked together in ways because they're part of a singular workflow, but they're individual activities of different things, and they get added to your calendar. That's all it is. It's just a matter of pre-setting up in a workflow these activities that manifest themselves. They get created from some action that you're doing and starting that workflow. And it could be a new listing that you're doing, maybe a pre-listing appointment, maybe it's a closing. All these different things that you do that warrant the ability to create these workflows can be created as workflows. And you start that workflow, and then it just magically puts in all these activities all at once into your calendar. So you're not having to go in there. Number one, a lot of agents, unfortunately, will say, okay, this is my listing appointment process, and they keep it all in their head. And they start going through the process of this, that, or the other thing. And if you've only got 1 or 2 listings, it's probably an easy way of doing it. You don't have to worry about it. But there's so much potential for saying, actually for missing some of the tasks that you would normally do and not keeping consistent. And if you're not consistent, that produces different outcomes at every point, and different outcomes comes challenges. So we do synchronize to the Google Calendar, so any activities that you put in here, you can set up within the workflow to automatically sync to your calendar. But more importantly, whenever you go into Realvolve, on the upper screen, there's a section for the calendar, but also on your dashboard, you have the ability to see those activities that are due today. And your daily task every day is just to go in there and complete those. You can get to individual calendars for each of the different people, properties, or transactions under the calendars tab of a record itself. But the real daily process that you're going to typically do is just look at your main calendar or your actions on your dashboard. So that's kind of the overview of everything that we'll be doing. But what I want to do is actually go live. So let's do something here. Just as a quick look at the kind of the ultimate process of this is whenever you come into your dashboard, you've got a couple different things. Number one, you've got your list of activities over here on the left, all the things that need to get done for any particular person or property or transaction. You can go to your overall calendar and just see all the activities that need to be completed. Or from the dashboard, which is I would almost say the most critical one to always check, just so that you don't miss it, is down here in the activities list. What are the things that need to get completed? If they're red, like some that I've got today here on this one, they're actually past due. If there was a time associated with it, maybe it's on that day, but it's in red, it's actually past due. If they're black, and I don't have any black ones on here as far as the title being black, those are things that are due today, but they're not past due. So if you've got any red items, definitely deal with those. Your goal every day, whenever you're working your calendar and doing the things, is to always check this activities list here and see if there's anything that you've missed. If it's been scheduled and it's not been handled, it should be in here in this list. And if it's in here, then you need to deal with it. Either deal with it or delete it. And typically you don't want to delete things if it's part of your process. So the question then becomes, how do I get these schedules created? How do I do the things that I need to do? So what I want to do today in this session, we've got about 45 minutes left of time here, is we go into the workflows area up here at the top. Now, what this does is this brings us to our complete list of all of our workflows. We can go in there and see different workflows that are available. We've got lots of different things in here. This is just my trainer account, so it doesn't actually have as many. I have thousands of them in another account, just that I use for different things. But what we want to do is show you kind of start to finish how you get those activities set up, and really how easy it actually is. I get a lot of comments from people saying, oh, it's so hard to create a workflow. And guys, it's not hard to create the workflow. I think the difficult part in most cases is understanding what your workflow actually is. And I think that's why McDonald's is so successful. Those teenagers that work and do the things that they're taught to do through their workflow wasn't created by the teenagers. It was created by the person that knows the process. And many times real estate agents will hire an assistant and say, okay, automate my process. Well, the assistant doesn't always know what's being done. That high school student doesn't know what they're doing. But you as a real estate professional do, or should anyway. And creating your processes is, and organizing them is what the workflow process, the workflow area here actually does. It helps you organize and create this. Now, we've got other trainings and show you how to use some spreadsheets for getting that information out of your mind and onto paper and using that then to build. What I want to do today is I'm not going to go quite that far. I'm going to assume that you know maybe something about what you do for your listing process. And in this case, we're actually going to start a brand new listing process. Click on the plus here to create a new workflow. Now I have the option of creating the new workflow, which is the default option. I can also go to and pull workflows from a library. That library, we've got hundreds of different workflows that people have set up, have saved, and made available to other users. They will typically sell them. There's some free ones in there as well that we've created. But the problem with that is those are other people's processes. And unless you know their process, you're going to have to go in there and do a little studying. You'll have to do a little figuring out what is it that they do. And that can be helpful, especially if you don't know a certain process. Maybe you're brand new to real estate and you don't have processes. That's a great place to start and just use somebody else's process. But if you have a process or you want to create your own process, you want to come up here to the create and click on continue. Now, just like any good book, any good instruction manual of what you want to do, we need to know what this book is about. What's the title of this workflow? What's the title of what we're going to be doing, the process itself? And what we might just do here is say, actually, I'm going to use office hours. Example is listing appointment. Okay, I'm putting office hours on there because I'm sure I've got other listing appointment items, or I probably do. I don't know. Anyway, we're going to put in a title. Title can be whatever you want it to be. It's just something that you understand as being my process for whatever. If you want to put, my listing appointment process as the title, absolutely. Whatever you want in there, it's totally up to you. What is important is, what is this workflow being used for? Is it a contact workflow? Is it a property workflow, or is it a transaction? We have to know this. This is the first decision point. We have to decide, where are we going to run this workflow whenever it goes to run? Well, in this case, I'm going to choose property. We're going to be doing some property type stuff. It's a listing. We're going to be doing it from there. So I'm going to choose that. If it had anything to do with lead generation or follow-up of contacts, whatever, you choose contacts. If it's a closing process where you've got the contract and all the things that you do from contract to close or post-closing, that would be the transaction side. In this case, we're going to choose property. All the rest of this, technically, you can ignore, at least initially. They allow you to do some additional stuff, but as long as I have a title and where I know where I'm going to use this workflow, that's all I need to know. I come down here and click on add. We're not going to worry about that stuff right now. Now, at minimum, for my listing appointment, what would I probably want to do? Probably I want to actually create my listing appointment. Okay, I want to know when is my listing appointment and set that up. So I'm going to come down here to the add another activity to this workflow. And in here, I'm going to choose, I've already got some items that I want to do this here on, and I want to pull this up. So the title on this is going to be listing appointment. And then I've got here, I'll take this off. You could just say listing appointment. Okay. And if you did that, which is fine, it goes to create the activity. In Realvolve, it would actually show the address of that within the description of the activity without a problem. So you would know it's a listing appointment you're going to do. You would know which activity or which address this is for this activity. The problem becomes if you do synchronize to Google, which is an option down here in the bottom left. If you choose that you want to put this on your Google Calendar, which you can just check that if you do, then whenever you go to synchronize this, Google has limitations on some of the information that it shows on the screen. And it might be beneficial if you are synchronizing over to Google by identifying what is the property address that I'm doing this listing appointment for. In which case, what you can do is we have special merge fields for the title. There's just a limited number of them. But if you put in bracket, that's the two square brackets next to your P key. They are the square brackets, not the curly braces. It will show you a merge field that you can put in there. In this case, there's only one merge field you can use, which is the property street address. So we can put that in there. So whenever this activity gets created, it's going to merge in whatever address that this workflow is getting started on. And if you are synchronizing to Google, it would then have that address as part of the title of that activity, just so that it's nice and easy to see. Who is this going to be assigned to? In this case, Joe Agent. Now, if you're a lone agent, that's a single agent, you don't have team, putting your name in there is perfectly acceptable. What you might want to do, however, is instead of that, you might say, well, this activity might be being used by other teammates. So whenever the activity gets created, I want to assign it to whoever the listing agent is for this property. So here we're using a role versus if I wanted to, I could assign specific people. If I know I'm always going to use this particular person to do this particular task, I can just pick them. But you can also choose that you want to do a role. We got lots of different roles in here. And by choosing a role, that means it will assign it to a person whenever you go to start the workflow. It'll ask you who is the listing agent and then do that process. One thing to note, listing agent, seller agent is the same thing. It's the seller's agent, I should say. We have seller agent, who's representing the seller, the listing. We do have, if you're doing this within a transaction, you would also use buyer agent and buyer agent 2. Those types of things are available. But in this case, I'm just going to use listing agent. And who am I going to do this listing appointment with? Well, I can come down here and say, well, the activity itself could be assigned to nobody. I mean, it could be just a task that I need to do. Doesn't really have to do with any particular person. Or I could come down here and I could say, well, I need to do this with the seller and maybe the seller 2, 3, 4, whatever. I deleted the seller one. So here I've got both seller and seller 2. It doesn't matter what order they're in. It's just who's going to be in here. So now I've got the title, I've got who's going to be assigned this activity, and who is it with. Now, the big question becomes, when am I going to do this listing appointment? Well, whenever I start the workflow, might not be on the same day, probably shouldn't be on the same day as the activity itself, but we can click into the schedule piece here and we can do some computing. We can specify a certain day, but that doesn't do us any good in this case because we want to run this multiple times. So we want to do some computing of this. Whenever you talk about the computation of a date, it's the formula for creating the activity on your calendar. You got some really cool options here. The number part is the number of days, weeks, months, or years, either before or after some given date type. In this case, I want to say 0 days after. Instead of the start date, we're going to choose the listing appointment date. So this is the listing appointment activity, right? We want to do this activity. We want this activity to happen 0 days after, which means on that same day of the listing appointment date. That listing appointment date has a date, but it also has a time. Right below that is the options for, is there no time set at all? Is it an all-day activity? Is it a certain start and ending time? Or because I'm using listing appointment date, you also have the option of listing appointment time. And that's what we want in this case. Now, just kind of how things work in Realvolve is, if you've got an activity that's using a specific date and time like this becomes the controlling activity of that date field. So whenever it does, what I mean by that is if I start this workflow and I give it an appointment date and time and it puts it on the calendar for me, if that date changes and I go and I drag and drop this listing appointment activity to a different date, it will change these, both the date and the time, to be the appropriate date and time in the date fields of that listing. So it would actually change the listing appointment date field itself to whatever date you drag it in, if both of these are set like this for a listing appointment. And we've got other dates that it does this as well. I mean, anything that has a date typically has a time. Not everything, but most everything does. And if it does have a time and both of them are set, then at that point everything is linked together as that critical date and time piece. So at this point, I've created my title, I've created who it's to, who it's with, and when is it supposed to happen. Once I have that, that's really all I need for an activity. All these other things are arbitrary. They're not necessarily needed. I am going to go ahead and just say, well, this is an actual appointment type. We've got to-dos, birthdays. I mean, there's some certain key types that we have available as part of Realvolve. I'll set this as an appointment, and I'm going to click on Add. So, if anything that you want to, if you just wanted to do this one thing as a workflow, you could certainly do this. We could go to a property right now. We could start this workflow, and it would come up and it would link them together. It would automatically set up the syncing. But that's not really beneficial. I mean, you've got one activity. Better than none, I guess, but it is consistent as far as the title. So you've got the title always consistent, doing it this way. But you probably want to do some additional things. What would you want to do? Well, we may want to say, soon as we set this appointment, we want to make sure that we call for a confirmation. Okay, so let's do this. Let's add another activity. Let's give it a title, and who would be doing this? Now, this is a case where maybe the assistant, instead of the actual listing agent, maybe the assistant is going to, call and say, hey, just want to let you know we've got a listing appointment set at such and such date and time. Want to make sure you've got it on your appointment calendar. In this case, again, we want to tell the seller and maybe seller 2 about this. When do we want to call them? In this case, 0 days after start date. As soon as I start this workflow, I want to, add this to the to-do list, basically, of my assistant to do the confirmation call. So I could do that. I could say, if this was, instead of to confirm it as part of the initial setup, maybe this is an activity to confirm the day before. So here's a different option. You could say one day before the listing appointment date. I don't necessarily care when she calls. I just want to make sure that it is called on a specific date before this one. So we could certainly do that. If you want to set it as an all-day activity, if you want to set it at a certain time, always confirm your appointments at 9 a.m. You can certainly do that. In this case, we might come down here and say, well, anything that I'm going to confirm, I'm always going to confirm those at 9 to 10 is my confirmation periods that I've specified. So I'm going to do something like that. So you could certainly do something like that. Once you've assigned that call confirmation 1 day before, then that's all I need. So now we've got a little bit better process itself. Actually, I set this as a to-do. It is a call. I might go back in there and change it from a to-do to a call. Update that. So now we've got a call. So in this case, I've got my listing appointment date. 1 day before that is when my assistant is going to do a call. If you don't want calls, maybe you want to do an email, and actually what you might even do, an email or a text message, you might do that as well, just as a secondary option. So let's do this. Listing appointment confirmation email. Who's going to do that? And maybe again, it's the assistant that does it. We're going to do this with the seller and seller 2. Again, each time you have to know, who am I going to do something with? And then similar type of thing. Maybe I want to do this 1 day before the listing appointment date. Now, something to understand or know is whenever, and I'm going to choose this as an email, whenever I had told you earlier that if you drag and drop, once this activity is created, if you drag and drop this activity on your calendar from one date to another, maybe they call up and say, I can't make it on that day. Can you change it to Thursday? And you drag it and you drop it there. One thing to note is that any time you have a controlling activity like that and it gets changed, or if you change the date and time in the record itself, you go to that property and you change that listing appointment date to a different date and time, then any activity that uses that date and time will automatically get changed as well. So if you changed that activity from a Monday to a Thursday, and you had originally started this so that this would have been one day before, then the activity itself, whenever you change it to a Thursday, this activity would change to be the Wednesday before. So just know that that's done for you automatically, and you don't have to worry about that. So in this case, we'd send an email. One of the things that is important to have is your templates already created. So if you're creating anything like an email, before you go to create the action, you need to have the template available that you can pick from. And one thing that I may already have one in there. Let me just go see here. Send email confirmation. In this case, I want to send it manually with preview. You've got some options. Do I want to send it manually with preview, without preview? Do I just want to send it automatically? Which is probably something I would probably tell you to do, is just, have it sent automatically. And then that way you don't have to worry about anything. And then in here, we choose, what is it? Is it an SMS? Is it an email, or whatever? So we choose that, and then we choose the template and confirm. Actually, let me go listing. New listing. So I'm going to see if I had anything in here. I don't really have anything already pre-written, which is why I was saying it's important to know which templates that you have. If you've got a template that you can use, you can certainly pick it. If you don't, go create it, and then you can select it. We're not going to do that on this one, just so I can get this going real quick. Actually, and I probably should go ahead and do it. So let me I'm going to open this up in a new tab. Yeah, well, I couldn't see it. Okay, so here I have my templates. If you go into the templates area, I can click on new template, and we're going to give this as a confirm listing appointment as being the title. It is part of a property workflow. We need to know that in order to get the right merge fields. Confirmation of listing appointment, and you could say, dear seller, or greeting. I'll just put in here greeting. It'll send it to whoever's going to be going to them. Dear greeting, listing appointment reminder. And then here we can put in listing appointment date and bracket. I didn't say that. Anytime you want to use merge fields within the template, all you got to do is put in the square brackets, just like we did in the title. Anything merge field-ish, where we're going to pull data, you just put in bracket, and it understands it's going to put in some information in there. And then you can start typing in what information that you want to pull from. And in this case, I want the listing appointment, and I want the listing appointment time. Please let us know if you are unable to send. You might put on the location, you put in whatever, and then we put in signature, and then we'll click on save. So now I've got this template that I can come back over here and say email confirmation. And instead of this, I'm going to choose that template I just created, confirm, and then I click on save. Now I click on add. So now I've got my listing appointment, I've got a call one day before, and I've got an email that's one day before that is an action. You see the little activity action indicator right there. Now, once I've had my appointment, once I've actually done that, then I might want to do some follow-up, okay? Might be a couple things that we want to do. So I'm going to choose that, create another activity. Just clicked on the add another activity. And what I want to do is listing appointment callback. And in this case, I want the listing agent to be the one doing it. So I'm going to choose listing agent. And who is it with? Again, we're going to do the seller and seller 2. In this case, it was a call. When am I going to do this one? In this case, I want to do it 2 days after that listing appointment date. And again, I can assign a time if I want to do my listing appointment callbacks. You can just put it on a to-do list, however you want to do that. And then I can click on add. And then one more thing that we might want to do. Now, you could certainly do it on the listing appointment itself, but what I want to do is I want to create one more activity that I do one day after the listing appointment that just does some verifying of the results. So in this case, maybe we come up here and we say, verify listing appointment results. Who's doing this? Now, again, you could have the assistant doing this probably. You could have the listing agent, just depending on who you want to do this. Again, we probably do the seller and seller 2 on this. Just for checking. This probably is more of a to-do. And what I want to do though is I want to use another feature that I've got where I want to show this. Now I could very easily just say one day, let's do it this way, one day after the listing appointment date. I could do that without a problem. It would work just fine. But there might come a time when you had that listing appointment date, and for whatever reason, it didn't get completed. And because it didn't get completed, you need to wait until it's actually marked as completed. Maybe you went, you did your thing, and it didn't actually get done properly, and you needed to reschedule or whatever. So this by itself would work, but we do have another option that says, based off of the completion date of an activity. So what I want to do in this case, just as a letting you know it's there, is saying, okay, I want to verify the listing appointment results. I want it one day after the completion of a different activity. In this case, it's going to show me the list of what activities that are part of this workflow, and I want to say the listing appointment in this case. So it will say, once this activity has gotten checked off, it got completed, then one day after that completion process of that activity, I want this activity to be something that I want to do. Okay. It probably is a phone call. It could be whatever. It could be just a to-do, or you might come in here and you could create an action or multiple actions. So what you might do in here is you might say, got the listing was one outcome that could have happened. And if that did happen, then maybe I want to start a new listing workflow. Okay, so I got the listing. Maybe I didn't get the listing. Maybe they said no. They said no. In which case, I might start some other workflow. Okay, and I could choose that. Maybe they said not now, or they've got other listing interviews to do. And hopefully that's not the case, but not yet might be an answer. And if that's the case, maybe you start a different workflow. This is that branching capability that we were saying, okay, one day after the activity gets complete, then I want to do something. So there's all that. So I can then pick and choose which option that I want to do at the time that I go to complete this activity. So here we've got a workflow that's got 5 activities. It could have 500 activities. It doesn't really matter. But this is a very, very basic, very good start to a process that you may have within your system. Now I'm going to come over here and go to a let's go to One Alpha Way. I use a couple different ones. Actually, this one's already closed. I'll just create a new one. Create a property. And in this property, I'm going to say 2 office hours way. And we don't know all this yet. We don't know this listed, but we've got an address on this. We've got some people. Maybe I've got some over here. I've got Mark Stepp as the seller. And since Mark is is connected to Kathy, it automatically creates the Kathy record as the seller too, which is great. And then I come over here and I want to start this workflow. In this case, office hours, listing appointment. So here, say next. I'm starting this workflow. In this case, it shows those 5 activities that are available. Great, next. It's going to say, okay, because I was using roles for listing agent, I'm going to choose Joe Agent as the listing agent. Who's the assistant? I'll choose Annie Assistant. And then click on next. When is my listing appointment? Well, maybe my listing appointment is on June 12th. Whatever. What it does whenever I choose that date, because of all those date calculations and stuff, it automatically creates all those dates. You'll see one here is being to be determined because we said its date is going to be assigned based off of the completion of the appointment. So we don't know that date yet, but all the rest of them were basic calculations of either so many days before or so many days after the appointment date. I click on next. Because I had selected my people, it knew to pull those in as seller 1 and seller 2. If I didn't pull them in earlier, I could select them from here, and based off of selecting them, it would make the connection into the people tab for me. And then I come here and I click on done. And then it goes and it starts that listing process, that pre-listing process or whatever. And if I go into my activities now, I can see for this property, I've got all these activities now as part of my workflow created activities in my calendar. I could go to my calendar and go to June, and I can see those activities. You see there's 4 of them. The 5th one doesn't have a date yet, so it doesn't show it until my listing appointment itself is complete. Just if we click on this, you'll see that the title of this was listing appointment 2 office hours way. That was because I used that merge field. So it went ahead and put the address of that property into the title of the activity because I used that merge field. And then it will have also sent it over to Google as well. If I go to my main calendar up here at the top, then I can go to June here, and then here are the things that are part of that process. So all the things that that are needed are now added to my calendar, and whenever I go to my dashboard on that day of the appointment reminders, they would show up here as being activities that need to get done. I go in there and then I go and complete them. Now, because they're not due today, they're not on my list, but these are the things that would be available. And that's pretty much it. I mean, that is the process of taking some basic elements of what you want to do in your process, that workflow. You build them into the workflow, and then you go in and you create them as workflow elements, one at a time, and then you can do stuff, start the workflows, get them onto your calendar, and then you can use a process that I typically call design, build, run, repeat. We designed it, we built it, we ran it, now we repeat. Was there something in that process that I might want to do differently? You know, maybe I wanted to add some checklists, or maybe I wanted to do whatever. You could then come back in here and say, office hours, listing appointment. Maybe I wanted to, for my listing appointment, maybe I wanted to create a checklist of things I want to be sure to bring, or, you know, whatever. I could come in here and say, you know, create the checklist. Maybe instead of just being a listing appointment process here, maybe I want to decide what information do I want to add to this to prepare my CMA, so that I have a complete CMA that I can take to the appointment. So you'd create other activities, and you just start building those individual activities to this process, 1 at a time, 2 at a time, whatever you want. And over time, as you do your process, you refine it over and over again, it then becomes a point at which everything is done on your calendar for you, and you've got the perfect outcome. You've got the ability then, in some cases, to hire that high school student as an assistant that may not know anything about your process, but they can start a workflow, they start the workflow, and they can start going through the process of completing the activities that's assigned to them. That's how McDonald's becomes such a big company. That's how you can be a big company as well. Your processes is your business. And if you set them up the way you like to do business, you're not necessarily using somebody else's process. You can, like I said, but in order to use somebody else's process, you need to understand it. Is that the way you really want to do your business? And if it is, great. If it's not, you can go in there and customize it, or you can just start from scratch like I did on this one and build it. So we've got just a couple more minutes. Any questions about any of that I just did? I know I went through a lot. Okay, no flashing mics. If you do have questions, certainly reach out to me. You can certainly do that. If any of that was just totally overwhelming, you don't want to do it without some assistance, some help. We do have premium services ability. You can sign up for some premium services. It's where you get assigned a navigator. That navigator will take you through certain elements. There's different plans that are available. For attending today, you can do the 25% off the navigator program. There are lots of instructions and helps. We've got videos on our YouTube channel. There's lots of capability for getting additional help and stuff in the event that you need help on any of that. One last call for question and answers. We're just about out of time. Going once, going twice. All right, everybody. Thank you so much. I hope this was helpful. If it was, let me know. And if it wasn't, if you need extra information, certainly reach out to me, mark@realvolve.com. Talk to you later. Have a great week.